Here's an idea. The recent flood of superhero films has to do with a lot more than movie studios that are out of ideas. For as long as people have told stories, those stories have involved the feats of great and powerful characters. Gilgamesh, Athena, Moses, Beowulf, Paul Bunyan, Dolly Parton. But only since the early 20th century have we had superheroes. In just a short time, they've become an inextricable part of the cultural landscape, especially in Hollywood. Superman, Thor, Captain America, Spiderman, Batman. If you don't draw a distinction between highly trained masked vigilante and superhero, which who knows, maybe you do, they are, ready, huge, seemingly permanent features of modern media. And here we'll pause to repeat a major sentiment from our Miss Marvel video, which is that, whoa, the world of superheroes is full of white dudes. Yes, there are female superheroes and superheroes of color. Blade, Captain Marvel, Falcon, the Invisible Woman, Luke Cage, Miss America, Miss Marvel, Spawn, Simon Baz, Wonder Woman, Storm, and War Machine, just to name a few. If mutantness and a giant metal suit don't also exclude superheroism, which for you, maybe they do. But you could very fairly argue, I think, that of the above, only Wonder Woman is anywhere near as prevalent as the other most well-known superheroes, and she doesn't even have her own movie yet. So I just didn't want to leave this point unmade, that the popular construction of both history and superheroes in the West, lots of white dudes. And that's probably not a coincidence. And now anyone who wants to accuse me of being a social justice warrior can spend the rest of the video formulating their petulant comment, just trying to make your lives easier. Here for you. Anyway, it's no wonder that people love superheroes. Here are these great people awarded with incredible abilities, able to take matters into their own hands. Fighting the good fight, dealing with power and responsibility as we all do, making sacrifices, trying to do the right thing, and succeeding occasionally on a grand scale. They sometimes struggle with their authority, but ultimately, in our most popular conceptions and expressions, they have it and do amazing things with it.
Looks like you're giving the orders now, Captain.
Damn right.
As Noah Berlatsky wrote for The Atlantic, by reading comic books and going to see superhero films, we get to see, quote, an authority put everything in order. This, incidentally, is also one way to view the progression of history. Authority figures putting everything in order. In keeping with the dude-centric nature of so many things, it's called the great man theory of history. In On Heroes, Hero Worship, and the Heroic in History, Thomas Carlyle describes this idea, saying that it's only through the actions of great men, people like Napoleon, William the Conqueror, or Alexander the Great, that progress is ever achieved. He calls these people heroes. Carlyle was quickly challenged because his idea is complete rubbish. Herbert Spencer rightly pointed out that heroes are the products of so many things: race, class, labor, gender, social and political standing, luck, that it is ridiculous to give them all of the credit for progress. And just on a personal note, a lot of the people that history has deemed heroic were deemed so only because of the number of people that they killed or countries that they invaded, so that also a troubling rubric for heroism. The main idea being that history makes people just as much as people make history. But that doesn't mean that Carlyle's great man theory or great person theory suddenly lost all of its meaning. Our collective love of narrative and our tendency to view history through its lens means that we also tend to privilege the accomplishments of characters or powerful leaders. It's easy to view history as a parade of characters, reconfiguring the world using the power that they've been granted, cultivated, or fought for. Steve Jobs, Joan of Arc, Einstein, Nelson Mandela, Elvis, Marie Curie, Maya Angelou, they all left their own indelible marks on the world. These people changed the world, but that they could change the world means that the world was in need of and able to change.
Look at me, I design coastlines.
Great people change history, but their presence indicates that science, technology, art, politics, economics are all capable of and have, in fact, changed. And often, as I think all of these people would admit, with the hard work and equal sacrifice of countless people alongside them. Einstein did not single-handedly change science nor Elvis music. Batman will never single-handedly change Gotham nor Superman Metropolis. Which, and maybe this goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, means that locally concentrated groups of great figures throughout history, Greece in ancient times, Florence during the Renaissance, Paris in the 20s, New York basically whenever. I'm walking here. We're in New York. Indicates a pre-existing willing or readiness for change at that time in those places, marked by the attitudes of not just one person, but many. And maybe we ask with a knowing wink and nod if the same is not true for the growing concentration of superheroes. Since X-Men in 2000, there have been an average of 6 superhero films every year. Ricky Anderson ran the numbers and let me know there have been 64 major American superhero films in the last 10 years. That's more superhero films than the 26 years previous to that. So, an uptick, you could say, or you could just look at this infographic that Doug Dooling sent me. Pretty ace. Now, it's easy to see all of this as some kind of adventure in late capitalism. Movie studios are lazy, out of ideas, or both, and so they recycle all of the stuff that already has a following and hope that it doesn't tank too hard. And maybe that's exactly right, but maybe, like all great figures and concentrations of great figures, this says something about our moment in history. A culture's myths always indicate what they hope and fear, and if superheroes aren't our myths, I don't know what is. Maybe Bill Murray? For instance, in the Studies in Comics journal, Chris Murray writes about how our superheroes reflect changing attitudes about liberty. First, Murray describes the difference between positive and negative liberty, first developed by political theorist Isaiah Berlin. In Two Concepts of Liberty, Berlin describes negative liberty as the area within which the subject is left to do or be what he is able to do or be without interference by other persons. Positive liberty is, quote, the source of control or interference that can determine someone to do or be this rather than that. It, quote, comes to light if we try to answer the question, by whom am I ruled? Murray writes that superheroes used to be, quote, champions of the oppressed. They were expressions of positive liberty. They were all of the good parts of Carlyle's great men. But after the start of World War II, they started to change. The superhero, he writes, went from being an icon of positive liberty, reflecting the frontier myth and rebellious spirit that marked American political thinking, to a policeman for negative liberty, suspicious of difference or change and fundamentally invested in the maintenance of the status quo. Where their powers once meant that superheroes were free from societal conventions and could act as revolutionaries, their powers would eventually be used to reinforce those conventions, especially as they were written during American war times. Our blockbuster superheroes specifically seem to exhibit both liberties. They are authorities, but they also question the effectiveness of authority. Sometimes they question the effectiveness of their own authority.
I'm just not the hero type. Clearly.
They sometimes fight the status quo in their world, like in V for Vendetta, Batman Begins, or Days of Future Past, if you consider those characters superheroes, and they sometimes fight the status quo in our world, as is the case with Michael B. Jordan being cast as the Human Torch. But mostly they seem content to maintain or simply ignore it, swooping in to eradicate some sudden external threat and then returning to their superhero perches until they're needed again, or are themselves somehow threatened. What all this says about us and our time, probably a lot. And maybe someday we'll really upset the status quo and make a good Hulk movie. We can only hope. Hulk! Smash! What do you guys think? What does the current resurgence of superhero films say about our moment in history, related to liberty or otherwise? Let us know in the comments, and I'm sorry, but it would be super if you subscribed. Let's see what you guys had to say about IKEA? I don't know, it just sounds so weird to me. IKEA. Let's also see what you had to say about IKEA. First, and of course foremost, I had an amazing time last week at the Phoenix Comic-Con. Thanks to everybody who came up and said hi, who I met, who came to the panels that I sat on. It was awesome to meet you. I had a great time. It was my first Comic-Con. Y'all are so nice. Everybody was just so nice, and Phoenix was cool. I had a great time. The end. maymaylingling says that Marx would have loved the episode because IKEA furniture allows people to work on something from start to finish, something that industrialization took away from the worker. And I don't know, that means you have to look at start as picking something off the shelf and finish as building it in your living room. But I will say he probably would appreciate the creativity of IKEA. He said that capitalism is a very creative system, and IKEA has effectively figured out how to make its customers work for them. So, very creative. Good problem solving, IKEA. InMaTeofDeath and a bunch of other people asked about my pronouncement that you must respect all ideas, even the ones that are stupid and dangerous, and challenged it, and rightfully so. Thank you for challenging. MIRobin22 actually writes something remarkably close to how I feel, that the respect of an idea has to be independent of your agreement or emotional reaction to it, and that getting those ideas to change, especially the ones that you don't like, respect is the first step towards changing them. You respect some ideas the way that you respect your parents, but you respect other ideas the way that you respect weapons. They are dangerous things that are deserving of your respect because of the danger and the harm that they can do. So applying this to things that Ian Petrie brings up, these are things that are wrong, but I think disregarding them can be just as dangerous as allowing them to happen. And I think that that is what I mean by respect. I will agree that maybe my use of dogmatism was unnuanced or unsubstantiated, so fair criticism there. And that being said, Thomas Staalesen writes a really good kind of meditation on the idea of dogmatism. You should check it out. Thanks for writing this, Thomas. David Salazar brings up the famous example of the one egg you need to add to Betty Crocker cake mix to make people feel as though they have a competence. This is one of my favorite things. They could make the Betty Crocker cake mix so that you didn't have to add an egg, but it didn't sell as well, I think is the story, and because people felt like it was too easy. I only say that anecdotally. I've never actually looked that up, but I'm gonna keep telling that story because I like it. Jacob1 applies theories of alienation and social stratification to the IKEA instruction manuals that come with your furniture. It's very funny. Nice work, Jacob1. JennyBurger07 has some stern words of criticism for the IKEA effect paper and says that the overall human condition is affected by IKEA's constant suggestion that we just need more IKEA. More IKEA. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I need more IKEA. Logical Fallacies provides a breakdown of all of the ways the human condition is sated in IKEA using Maslow's hierarchy of need. This is a very good comment. A link to this and all of the others in the doobly-doo. And finally, this is a thing that happened. This week's episode was brought to you by the hard work of these caped crusaders. We have a Facebook and IRC and a subreddit, links in the doobly-doo, and the tweet of the week comes from Jonathan Orr, who points out that the character select music in Street Fighter 3 Alpha is called Who Will Be Your Double? And for this week's record swap, we will be replacing Arcade Fire with Wendy Carlos's Sonic Seasonings. All right, so adios, Arcade Fire, and welcome, Wendy Carlos.